Okay, welcome everybody. We've got a good number of participants now. So welcome to the 20s Plenty and Vision Zero road safety hustings for York and North Yorkshire mayoral elections. Now, there are, as the current count is 6 candidates, 5 of whom have agreed to come today. So really pleased, and thank you very much to Keith Tordoff, who's an independent candidate, Councillor Kevin Foster, who represents the Green Party, David Skaith, who represents the Labour Party, Cllr Felicity Cunliffe-Lister, who represents the Liberal Democrat Party, and Councillor Paul Haslam, who's standing as an independent candidate. So thank you, all of you, for coming today. Right. So we will, in a moment, we'll move to Amy. Just want to introduce a couple of other people as well. We do have people from the National 20s Plenty team here today, and they will be able to answer questions, particularly factual questions. If you want to have some sort of expert input, if you've got some factual questions, if you put them in the chat, and Adrian will be very happy to answer them in the chat. Or if we want to bring our attention to it a bit later after the any of the sections of this, we'll bring that to your attention. So we've got Adrian who'll answer technical questions, but Amy is going to give us a talk and an introduction from Vision Zero, and we will then have 3 minutes for each candidate to give. Introduce themselves, talk about how they view road safety and any other aspects of their campaign they want to draw our attention to in that 3 minutes. We will also be then going into questions. We have 8 submitted questions already. I'll probably take the first 2 together because they're quite similar, but otherwise I will just go each question and then just give each candidate, ask them to spend a minute or so on each answer, so they've all got a fair crack of the whip. So I think we will move on to the first speech, which will be Amy Aaron Thomas, and then I'll be names out of a hat to decide who's going first for the mayoral candidates. So Amy, would you like to? Very good, excellent, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Amy Aaron Thomas. I'm talking today about the role of enforcement, focus on enforcement in delivering Vision Zero for York and North Yorkshire. I work with Action Vision Zero, a small community interest company our work is made possible for the Foundation for Integrated Transport. I'm following up on a presentation that the Action Vision Zero founder, Jeremy Leach, gave in January on Vision Zero, where we talked about it on a wider base and with examples from London where we're located. My talk today is around enforcement with more examples from North Yorkshire for reference. Okay. Am I going down? Sorry. Okay. I'll do a quick recap on Vision Zero, safe system, and road danger reduction. Then I'll summarize quickly what's already in your safer road strategy in terms of enforcement. Most of my talk will be around your fatal 5, your priority offenses, and what progress North Yorkshire Police has made in the last 5 years, then what more they could be doing, and then I'll do a wrap up. Okay, Vision Zero and the safe system. So Vision Zero was introduced back in 1997 in Sweden. It was adopted unilaterally by their parliament. It was just the philosophy that nobody should have to die or be seriously or severely injured in a crash. Before then, we had always tried to whittle away at our casualty stats, but they were saying no, our goal should be none whatsoever. Now it's accepted as good best practice worldwide, and there's about 15 areas in Britain where have adopted Vision Zero. North Yorkshire is one of them, but I believe it's the only one that doesn't have a target date for when they are supposed to eliminate deaths and serious injuries. That's the principle. Safer system is really how to achieve it. Okay, and its own principles include people make mistakes. That's what causes road crashes. And that was a big change from road safety because traditional road safety, there's a lot of victim blaming. There was a lot more pressure on people to be trained or be educated or become better humans, not make mistakes. This one accepts it. Okay. Second principle is that human body has a limited physical ability to tolerate crash forces. This is basic physics. And a safe speed and safe system is roads shared with vulnerable road users. It's 20 miles per hour. That has a 10% chance of death or severe injury for a pedestrian who's been hit. A third principle is it's a shared responsibility between those who design, build, and manage roads. So it's not just the roads and vehicles. It's not just the users anymore. And all parts of the system must be strengthened. Now, road danger reduction, this is homegrown, and this really predates Vision Zero. It's more than 30 years old, and it takes a wider approach. It's worried about all the kinds of harm from inappropriate and excessive use of motor vehicles. So that's intimidation that stops people walking and cycling. That's air pollution. That's carbon emissions. That's all in addition to KSIs. So at the heart of road danger reduction is reducing the dominance of motor vehicles. That's through the traffic volume, traffic speeds, and danger. And the goal is to have less driving as well as safer driving. And it's also perception of safety matters. So it's not just KSIs. It's not just official stats. People need to feel safe as well. And if you want to see a recent example of a wider area with rural and urban, look at Oxfordshire, which has just consulted on their Vision Zero strategy, which is based on road danger reduction. Okay, so how has North Yorkshire done in terms of KSIs? Because that's important. And if you look at the stats of the reported ones by police, whereas across England and Wales, a number of people killed and seriously injured have only gone down 2% since 2017. In North Yorkshire, they've gone down by over a third, which is fantastic. Deaths haven't gone down quite so much, only about 28%, but this is really good progress. Then if you look at all motoring offenses, it's an even better story. You've more than doubled your motoring offenses that are sanctioned. So these are the ones that are out of court sanctioned and at court conviction. So we've combined the data. It's only gone up 20% across the country, but as I say, in North Yorkshire, more than doubled. That is great news. So what's in your safer road strategy, which is covers current period? You've got some priority areas: high-risk drivers and riders, targeted enforcement, high visibility patrols, focusing on your fatal five, using speed cameras, speed awareness courses, which bring in the funds for your safety operations, and even randomizing drink drive checks. These are all key. You've got other actions in there as well. And I want to focus on your fatal five priority offenses, and they show what North Yorkshire Police has detected, sanctioned, as well as how they fare within the other police forces. And I also want to give credit to North Yorkshire Police here for adopting careless driving as a priority offense. Nationwide, National Police Chiefs Council, it's fatal four. They don't include careless driving. A few other police services, police forces do include careless driving, and great that North Yorkshire is one of them. Okay, so the next 5 slides will take the same approach. It shows you the total number of speed limit offenses that were sanctioned or convicted. So you've gone from over 30,000 to almost 74,000 in 5 years, which is great news. You've also gone from being 28th out of 43 to number 4. That is a real success story. And that's really important with speeding, because speeding accounts for like 85% of all offenses. What it doesn't tell you, though, is where your speedings happen. So if your speed enforcement is on higher speed roads, then it's really not benefiting people walking and cycling. And other police areas have started reporting the offenses by speed limit, but not North Yorkshire. I mean, I know they publish the data on every offense detected by a safety camera in a van, but it doesn't tell you the speed limit. Okay, careless driving. There's progress there too. You're down from 16 to 9 in the past year. So number 9 out of, again, 43 police services. That's really good. Mobile phone offenses, we had problem around legislation, but so it's really only last year that really matters. Number 7, drink drive offenses. You really improved in the last year. You've gone from 29 to 12. You're now detecting more than 2 drink drivers a day. Drug drive, which really only began being enforced in 2017 with investment from DFT. You got less than a half of the drink drivers detected, but you're still at the same level, number 9 in the country. Seatbelt offenses, this is interesting. This is where you do best, where you're number 2 out of all the police services in the country, again, on terms of offenses per KSI basis. So we're trying to normalize risk. And, you know, I know you're outside the urban areas, you do have the problem with driver and car occupant casualties. So what else could you be doing? Well, you still need more speed enforcement, especially if you're on lower speed roads, I would guess. I don't think it's happening there. Otherwise, I think we'd be hearing about it. And I just wanted to highlight the change made in London. When we first had our Vision Zero Action Plan in 2018, we were pitiful on speed enforcement. Now our 20-mile-per-hour speed limit enforcement has gone up 5-fold. It's the most common speed limit offense detected and accounts for 37 of all our speed limit offenses. So I'd like to see the same in North Yorkshire. And also, you really need to improve your transparency. It should be possible to see where your speed limit enforcement is happening. Also, Operation Snap. This is an area where North Yorkshire seems to have lagged behind with the online reporting. You know, West Yorkshire is one of the police services that's really proactive about this, as included in the Leeds Vision Zero strategy. And they're very transparent. They publish data on a quarterly basis. Whereas it really seems to have lagged behind, they say, in North Yorkshire. And this is key because you need to be working with the public. The NPCC say the public are your key partner, and they are. You know, what do you have? 40 roads policing officers in North Yorkshire? It's 3% of all your police, you know, which is another reason why you need to look at how you're using local police. Sweden this year has said that, or last year rather, they announced how they would never have enough roads policing officers. So they're going to require all police officers to allocate 20 minutes a day on road safety. And Ireland has adopted the same. So they're saying, don't judge us on roads policing numbers, which are going down, because we've made that a shared responsibility with others. So there is more that can be done in North Yorkshire. So I just had 10 minutes. That was a quick run through. I just wanted to highlight the Vision Zero is the principle. Safe system is the approach to reducing KSIs, but road danger reduction is the wider one, with tackling all traffic harm and with reducing motor vehicle use and improving perception of safety. So it differs from Safer System and Vision Zero there. But enforcement is key to all these three areas. And North Yorkshire Police Force, they've shown really big recent improvements in recent years. So full credit to them for that. Speed enforcement dominates, as I mentioned, over 85% of all enforcement. And it's through mostly cameras. But I think it's about 90% is done through cameras. But public still want more in terms of speed enforcement, including with 20-mile-per-hour enforcement on the roads where they're walking and cycling. You really need help from public and local police, not just from camera technology, and their transparency needs improved. And I wanted to end with an example of a good case, a good example of mayoral leadership in the West Midlands, where the mayor there worked with the walking and cycling commissioner, also Road Peace, and also Birmingham Live, important, the local newspaper, to call on the national government to do more, tackling hit and run, greater use of driving bans, improving support for crash victims. And this is really important because whoever wins as mayor is going to have the role of the PCC. You're going to be the local lead for criminal justice, and motoring offenses account for the vast majority of cases prosecuted at court. It often doesn't get that recognition. I just wanted to end on that note. So good luck. You have a strong base to work on, but you will always have limited resources and unlimited demands. So please focus on reducing traffic harm, and that means harm posed to others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. That's really, really, really good. Good to know that there are some good news stories there. I think from my perspective, I think it's just worth saying that I think North Yorkshire historically have had a very, very high casualty rates. Partly of it, certainly North Yorkshire. I'm not sure about York, but because of our we have a huge road network, rural road network. But I do think that there is so those big improvements. I think there still is a lot that can be done. So I'm hoping that our candidates can answer questions around that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull out some names out of a hat for who's going first. In the meantime, what I'd like to do is just encourage anybody who would like a question. We have got 8 questions, but if we've got any time at the end, if you want to put a question in the chat for candidates, or a question for Adrian, who can do some fact checks if you've got any factual queries. So that's there. So I'm going to pluck the first name out the hat, and it is David. So David is the Labour candidate. David, would you like to unmute yourself and have 3 minutes, please?
Excellent.
About your campaign.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and good evening. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to deliver real change to our region which has been badly let down by 14 years of Conservative government. We have seen huge cuts to frontline services, our infrastructure is literally falling down, and councils up and down the country are on their knees. This cannot go on. With an elected mayor, we will have the opportunity to look long-term and invest, build for the now and the future, and set our region to be truly sustainable. At the heart of all this, we'll be building good quality affordable homes with the support of Homes England and the York and North Yorkshire Housing Partnership, giving people the skills and creating the jobs that will help York and North Yorkshire be a true northern power, with particular focus on the green economy and renewable energy, done in partnership with Bio Yorkshire, York University, Ascot, Bryan and Ferret, and many other partners. And transport, building a connected transport system with focus on active and public transport. Work in partnership with other regions and mayors such as South and West Yorkshire Labour mayors, as well as Andy Burnham in Manchester, we can create a much improved transport system that not only supports travel in York and North Yorkshire, but the entirety of the north. I've also already started conversations with Tracy Braven in West Yorkshire, as the Mayor of West Yorkshire, as to how North Yorkshire we can improve our Operation SNAP system and to improve the reporting of driving offences. And I welcome the fact that Labour will be delivering 13,000 more police officers and PCSOs, which I'll make sure our region gets our fair share. We cannot ignore the fact that our roads need to be safer. Improving police numbers will sure help to deal with this. We need to create an environment where people can be less reliant on the car. The car will always be a key mode for many, but if we can deliver other viable options of travel, then we can work towards the reduction of overall car journeys, net zero and vision zero. The approach to meeting the aim set out by the devolution deal and the Mayor will need to be one that encourages collaborative working and looks long term. I welcome the opportunity to build our region places where people can live, work and be healthy and safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Thanks very much. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is Kevin, please. Kevin's from the Green Party. Thank you. Would you like to have your 3 minutes? Thank you.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm going to keep my address purely on road safety and not going to make political statements today. That's not what I'm here for. And I'm going to let you know what I can do for York and North Yorkshire in what I see my vision forward. So one of the most important things we're going to have to do as the Mayor is get both authorities, North York and York, together to get agreed on a priority. And one of them priorities I'd like to put forward will be road safety. My division, really sadly, last year lost a child on the road and a death happened. It's horrendous to happen and we need to make that reduction. And one of the ways we can do that is reducing speeds and look at the highway code. The highway code clearly states the priority is people first, then cycles, then cars, then buses. They're the things we need to focus on to get right in the area. And if we do that, we'll be able to be successful in reducing the deaths on our road. That will also be improved cycled areas and active travel, be able to naturally reduce our carbon footprints and reduce what everybody wants to make our places better and greener. So if we make better active cycle route, it all sets in to make that circular thing that makes this happen. I cannot stress how much we have to have agreed. We're going to have to work with all parties on this. It's a cross-party thing. It can't be just one way to drive forward. So I've listened to what happened and I've got some ideas. I'll save some of the other things at the moment for the questions because I could answer all them questions straight away, which would just ruin the debate really. So Ian, I'm going to leave it at that and I'll let the other candidates have a go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So next name out of the hat, we've got Keith. So would you like to unmute? Yeah, and
Yep.
talk? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Sorry about the background, folks. I'm in a pub in Scarborough. I've had to grab a room from them, and it's I've got lights all around me. I think it's important to say my background. My background is I was a police officer in West Yorkshire for over 20 years, so I've dealt with absolutely hundreds, if not thousands, of what we called in those days road accidents, which are now classed as road collisions, road traffic collisions. I've dealt with the most serious ones to fatalities. Obviously, I had to deal with the families, going and breaking the news to them, etc. I've investigated them as a supervisor. I obviously had to investigate crashes that occurred, including fatalities. I've also, since I left the police after 20 years with an exemplary service record, having received commendations, etc., been an investigator, fraud investigator for North of England for the Bank of Scotland, running also a business which was actually dealing with the investigation for insurance companies of road traffic collisions of all natures. I'm known for running the oldest sweet shop with our family in Pateley Bridge, involved in community as chair of the Chamber of Trade and also the chair of the Bloom Group. Within that, I've worked with Dale's Bus Group, who are volunteers. I'm still a member of the Dale's Bus Group, brought for the first time to the Yorkshire to the countryside, otherwise wouldn't be able to come and visit the countryside. Also working with people like Malcolm Margolis on Sustrans to get funding for feasibility studies for the Nidderdale Cycleway, which I say was successful in raising that money when I led the Chamber of Trade and held a meeting where we raised the final pot of money needed. So I've got for people investigating things. The important part about this is I am independent, and this is going to need an independent, this mayoral role, just as the Police Fire Crime Commission should always have been independent, hence the reason I stood in 2021 for Police Fire Crime Commissioner. The role of mayor should be independent because there's tribalism between York and North Yorkshire, and that isn't going to stop. And unfortunately, they'll never deliver, they'll never get anything done. This is a unique opportunity, as has been outlined by David, for somebody to be elected who is actually going to work with all the parties concerned, but also lead. And my background is to listen, to lead, to direct, but importantly, deliver. And my background shows that with all the initiatives that I've been involved in, from food festivals to bringing celebrities, to bringing film crews to North Yorkshire, to putting our actual business as a brand worldwide with a mail order business worldwide. So I believe it needs really strong leadership, because otherwise your leaders of North Yorkshire and your leaders of York are going to continue to say, I want to deliver, I want these cycle routes, I want these walkways, I want transport systems which are effective for people. And you're not, unfortunately, if we listen to politicians, they've had 14 years of actually promising this, never delivering. And it's time for change. And this is the final grasp opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. So our next one, I've picked out, I put all 6 candidates actually in a hat, and I've got Keynes next, but he doesn't appear to be here. So next one after that, we've got Felicity representing the Liberal Democrats. So Felicity, would you like to unmute and speak for 3 minutes?
Thank you. Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Felicity Cunliffe-Lister. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate in the mayoral election for York and North Yorkshire. So tonight's topic is road safety. You'll have seen I've given my pledge of support to 20 is plenty, and looking at my 7 key deliverable policies, 3 of them really relate to road safety more than anything else. The first one is health. Now, we all know if the roads are safer, we will all walk and cycle more. This has great potential for long-term health outcomes and also for our well-being. The second policy is my ambition to integrate public transport. If public transport is better connected, running on a single ticket system, it's more reliable, frequent and fit for purpose, more of us will use public transport. Now, the outcome of that is the roads will become safer, they'll be less congested and the emissions will reduce. And the third policy that relates to road safety is improving active travel. As I've already said, but if the roads are safe, we will choose to walk and cycle more. 20 is plenty is part of this, but there are other measures that can be taken to improve it, such as dedicated routes, better lighting, and better facilities such as proper storage, covered storage for bikes, and also for lockers as well. So I'll say it again, but safety really is key, and I'm a great example of this. In my 20s, I used to cycle through London every single day to work. I'd cycle through Parliament Square, and in fact I did get knocked off my bike by a Tory minister. He knows who he is. But moving on, I now only cycle when I'm on holiday, when I feel safe. So I cycle in Berlin, I cycle in Amsterdam, I cycled the Hebridean Way last summer, I'm cycling the Atlantic coast this summer, but I will not cycle that much in North Yorkshire, to be honest, because I don't feel safe on the roads. I'm going to give you a brief little bit of detail on me as a background for those who don't know me. I was a lawyer in my 20s and working in London, specialising in commercial property. When I was 30, I moved to North Yorkshire with my husband. We bought a castle and we turned it into a hotel. That hotel is Swinton Park. And that's created over 150 jobs in its time. And we now have a turnover of 6 million. I also have experience of running the rural estate. That's agriculture, forestry and conservation. So I do have a good broad base of skills and experience. It's an important role, the mayor. It does require experience, leadership, and the ability to get stuff done and make the most of all the opportunities that there are for the region. And I believe I have those skills and I'm the best candidate for that. I will drive change for the better. I will drive sustainable growth, and I'll demand a better deal for us all. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Felicity. So last but not least, we have Paul Haslam, independent candidate. Would you like to, if you could mute yourself, Felicity, and if Paul would like to unmute, that would be great. Thank you. Are you there, Paul?
Yeah, just putting my timer on. I don't want to over-egg anything. My name, as has been said, my name is Paul Haslam, an independent candidate in this election. The mayoralty presents a lot of opportunity, but especially for transport. And it's a chance for us to change the narrative here. When I joined the county council in 2017, as it was, the spend per head in North Yorkshire was a sixth of what it was in the southeast and London, of England and London. Those figures today, I chair scrutiny of transport for the North, and I've had those figures across my desk again this year. And it's still that 6-to-1 ratio. We have an opportunity to change that. And that's why this mayoral role is so important. But let me get into some real nuts and bolts here. This is actually about delivery. So my track record on roads, and that's where I'm focusing on, roads and active travel. I fought the relief road. In fact, that's why I was elected in, that was the mandate I was elected in 2017. And that road has gone away. I've put a 20-mile-an-hour scheme into my area, which I used funds that I raised by a combination of grants and locality funds. I've put drop curbs in so that it's safer for buggies and wheelchair users to operate. And just the other week, I got VAS signs put up in Hookstone within 4 weeks of asking. So while we talk about what we might do, the other thing that I've just done is I've delivered to every single councillor through the ACC route, well, except for Skipton and Ripon, I should add, is a complete package of how we can use the local plan, the local economic plan, and climate change in order to improve our roads and our road safety. So I've got a few things, and I could go on for an awful long time on this because it's a big topic. However, one of the things that, in terms of the local plan, one of the things that I see is all new developments have to have a true equal choice of movement. So it means you can have active travel, public transport, and the car. I think all developments going forward should have a default 20-mile-an-hour speed limit to allow for multi-transport users. This will help clean the air, and I think our homes should be powered by renewable energy, as should the cars. Houses should be deployed as close as possible to work and amenities and transport hubs. Transport hubs are a key thing, and somebody asked a question about the station gateway at York, so I'll leave that. But we need to look at how the road infrastructure works in terms of how does it promote and make safe and allow for modal shift to walking and cycling, catching the bus, park and ride. There's a number of options. So I am concerned that I'm going to go over my time. So what I will briefly is, what I will mention just briefly is that one of the things I want to set up with the mayoral fund is that in the parishes where they want to go for a 20-mile-an-hour limit, and they get that passed by the
Joe, I think this is starting to
council.
be unfair. He's using his time.
Yes.
time.
Okay.
Right.
Conservative.
Yeah. There'll be plenty of opportunities during the other 8 questions for you to make those points. Okay, that's fair enough. Okay. So we've got 8 questions submitted, and we've got another one from the chat. We're going to look at, and if we've got time, we'll include that as well. So I'll just bring up the questions. Okay, so we've got, I'm going to take the first 2 questions we've got first. Andy Jefferson, and I'll just give you a little longer because they're both quite close. Andy Jefferson, do you want to read your question out? The number 1 question, or shall I do it?
I will do it. Children travelling to from school actively has to be an aim for any mayor, and council also for that matter, given the impact it has on attainment. North Yorkshire has very poor uptake of walk, scoot and cycle to school schemes, particularly in coastal communities, despite having the associated verbiage in the local transport plan. The situation is largely down to perception of risk around roads, the absence of effective measures to reduce the risk, as well as the lack of effective engagement with schools. What will you do to make active travel to educational settings the default option?
Okay, and we'll just link that with the second, just a brief one. Mandy Carpenter, are you there? If not, I'll read hers out. It says, what are your thoughts on school streets, which is an initiative nationally which blocks roads off immediately in front of schools at certain times, like drop-off and pick-up times? Okay, so if we put those questions to, we'll start with our second person who went today, which was Kevin. Is it? Okay, yeah, Kevin was the second one. So we'll just rotate around that way.
Okay, thank you very much. On the active travel, I'll start on the active travel one. I have got something with the council at the moment coming in my area, but I am under constraints to divulge this at the moment. But I can assure you it will be coming very shortly in my particular area that I've fought for ever since I was Richmond District Councillor. Actually, that started and it's carried on. And I put the idea forward. It looks like it's been adopted. Unfortunately, I can't say anything about it. But what I can say is my big idea for schools and safety is, I noticed in my area when that child was run over not so long back, it wasn't by a school, by the way, and it's still investigation, so it's wrong to comment on why the accident happened, is we don't have zebra crossings everywhere we have a school. And I find that a bit bizarre. I have actually put an idea forward for the 2 to be put in schools in my area. And one of the problems with it is they are £35,000 each to put in each school. Now, that's going to be a lot of money to do the whole of Yorkshire and North Yorkshire. But what I will say is, Mayor, I'd like to start to put that in place. And I won't say zebra crossing for a reason. I will say a crossing point. Because some places would be better off with these tiger crossings with the cycle lanes either side and then the zebra crossing through the middle. The thing that really needs looking at is the cost of them. Now, I don't know that we can have the conversation with people about, you have to have these electric flashing poles to make these, and that's where the expense is coming from these. Now, can we call them something else as a crossing point for our children? They are some of our most vulnerable people. And so that's one of the things I really want to have a look at with both authorities if I become mayor. And then the parking issue is absolutely huge where I live. What really, really worries me is the parking on the pavement when they're actually obstructing children getting to school. And I'll only be a minute here when I try and question it. That's a real challenge we need to look at, but that comes from policing. And we need police officers to go down and move cars on and protect our children when they're actually getting to school. So that's the things I picked up, but I'm really hot about getting these designated crossing points for our children to get road safety. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Ian.
That's great, thanks. Okay, the next one, that was Kevin. Keith next, please.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, if elected, I would set aside the first 100 days to put plans in place. And a transport plan must be obviously the main part of that. And you need to listen to people, which I keep coming back to. But planning things rather than schemes that seem to be dropped in with no real view of what the consequences might be. Does it cause other areas to be blighted by people parking the cars and dropping children off, etc.? So we're always coming up with these schemes. A lot of consultants spend a lot of money. We've seen the Harrogate Station Gateway project, which is nowhere near what the original plan was about, which was reducing traffic. It's now a vanity project virtually, but the consultants have benefited to the tune of over £2 million and rising. We need to start and stop rushing into everything. Yes, deliver things, but plan, work with the various organisations, the groups, including the schools, including the parents, communities. It can be done. Pull the steering group together. Look at it from a business perspective. Start maybe as a model in York, get the first model rolled out very, very quickly, show people how it works and why it's a benefit to them. And then you need to get people to come on board with you. And once people see that something's been being used, rather than foisting schemes on where people feel that they've had no say in it.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, we'll move on to Felicity next, please.
Hi, and thank you. Can I just check, do you want me to answer the question on the school street scheme at the same time, or are we just talking about?
Yeah. So I'm putting them together. So if you want, you want to
okay.
say that,
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so dealing with the first question first, this is how do we encourage children to cycle to school more and try to get over this hurdle we have at the moment where the roads feel safe and they are safe, and what we can do about it. So two strands to this really. The first one is it's very hard for children to learn to cycle at the moment because parents don't feel like the roads are safe enough to learn on, so they don't even necessarily have a bike to start with. I think that's one of the problems with the current scheme, is that all the funding that's available for children to learn to ride applies to children who have a bike to start with. So I would fund a bike purchase scheme with a buyback provision in it to enable children who don't have bikes to have one. But then again, at the same time, we have to make the roads feel safer for the families to engage with the concept of cycling to school at all. Now, we have 20 is plenty, of course. That will help. I want to see more in the way of bike routes that are safe and that are lit. And I want to have better provision within schools of proper sheltered bike racks and storage within schools, so the children don't feel as if it's, you know, don't wish they were sitting in the car on the way home if they've got a wet bike at the end of the day. Dealing with the school streets issue, I can see it's a great thing. It reduces congestion, reduces air pollution, increases safety, but it's very much an urban solution where there are alternate roads and providing alternate routes around a school when the road is closed. And that applies to parts of York and North Yorkshire, but in many rural villages, there is only one road running through that village with a school on it. So we would have to, I think, consider other ways of making the road safe without actually necessarily closing it. I think there are ways of using the VAS alert systems, and yeah, also, I'm afraid I also thought about zebra crossings and the use of highlighting with whatever we can do to the fact that I'm enough. Is that enough?
Yeah, that's it. Really. Yeah, thanks,
I think I'm done.
Yeah,
I nearly got that.
much. Cheers. Well done. Okay. So Paul can go next, please.
Thank you. It's interesting, actually. I wrote a paper in 2020 called Active Travel to School, Walk, Bike or Scoot to School. So I am very much passionate about this and how we get these healthier travel issues. I'm going to take the second question first, because in principle, I believe that the school street scheme has placed in the mix of options to make our streets safer, but I don't think it's the de facto answer. And I think we have to look at bespoke solutions for every school. I think they're all different, and some are on what have become very principal roads these days, and some are on country roads. But I think one of the things we always need to be careful of is people don't like things to be done to them. They like things to be done for them. And I think this comes back to Keith's point about collaboration. And I think we have to discuss all the various options. And I think we probably need to start with the schools and the Parents Teachers Association. In the work I did back in 2020, and it's not changed much, is only 4% of children cycle to school. But actually, if you look at the numbers of the children that want to cycle to school, it's about 50%. And you have to ask yourself, well, what's the main barrier? And the main barrier is are our mothers, because they don't regard it as safe. So we've got to make the roads safer, and we've got to come up with safer solutions. So I would be saying we need to look at behavioural change. And one of the key ones I'd like to see, and I've just come from an air quality conference today in Manchester, and they actually have VAS signs, but they're actually VAS signs that react to the CO2 in the air. So actually the pollution in the air. And I think those could be things that we could start to do behavioural nudges with. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much. And last but not least, David, please. Thank you.
So when we're talking about this kind of change and how we travel, it's a whole mindset change. It's one that needs to engage with obviously the whole family. I would engage with schools, as everyone keeps saying. You know, this is not something that we're going to impose on people. We need to work with communities. We need to work with people. We need to work with schools. So I would look at developing more cycling courses that can be taught in schools and providing funds and support to be able to deliver those. I look at my own children who are in year 1 and year 4. They've not had any cycling support through their school yet, so that's one way of improving that. I believe Mr. Foster's touched on a perfect point on this. Around my children's school, we already have a 20-mile-an-hour zone, but unfortunately we have no designated crossing, so we have 3 streets leading into the area. There's no actual crossing area, and we do unfortunately have a lot of cars that do park on the pavement and park on the roads outside the school, which causes a lot of hazards. And then when we have the main school bus comes, that parks where it needs to be parked, but then it causes a lot of disruption, a lot of viewing difficulties. So people are put off by travelling, walking and cycling just because of the sheer nature of the surrounding area of the school, which so it really is about that collective work, in particular with schools, providing those courses, engage with the whole family to encourage cycling. I say, look at my children, 1 and 4, they haven't had any of that training yet, but they are very capable riders because I've been able to teach them, but actually they've not had any exposure outside of that. And where I'd also go from that, just away from active travel slightly, is I've been talking to a lot of the universities and colleges in the region about how they have a lot of difficulty with transport to actually colleges and universities in the region as well. And therefore, people are either not being able to travel or fall to a car. So again, my aim is to reduce overall car journeys. So by developing our bus network, particularly for our schools and colleges, to be able to get students from all over the region to the different university and colleges we have in the region. So again, reducing that car usage. Just on a second point, yes, I do in theory really. Sorry. I know
Okay, all right. I've got quite a few questions, but the next one's on active travel as well. So, right. So I'm just working out how to use my timer. Right. Okay. So we've got next one will be Malcolm. Malcolm, are you there? All right. Okay. I will ask Malcolm's question. So North Yorkshire County Council has an abysmal record on delivery of active travel schemes over the last 10 years.
Sorry
Millions
about
of
that.
Pounds. No.
Sorry.
Okay. Do you want to ask your question?
No, sorry. Do carry on. Now you started, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So North Yorkshire County Council has an abysmal record of delivery of active travel schemes over the last 10 years. Millions of pounds of funding have been won, certainly in Harrogate district and I believe elsewhere, much of which has been spent on consultants with little or nothing to show for it on the ground. What changes do the candidates think are needed to achieve timely delivery and value for money in future? Okay, so we're going to start with Keith, this one, thank you.
Strong leadership.
Just a minute.
Challenge.
Just a minute.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Strong leadership, challenging what's taken place in the past and not allowing it to continue with wasted money. Consultants always are from down south, amazing. We talk about levelling up, yet the millions of pounds go to companies down south. I don't know what the tendering process is, but it certainly doesn't seem to favour businesses in the north. And clearly, we need to, as I said, somebody who is independent, somebody who is going to actually be the conduit, to actually be the ambassador, to be the strong negotiator, to travel down to Westminster, a businessman with business expertise, which I have, and to actually bring the civil servants, the people, and get the funding that we need. At the moment, amazingly, we've had a Conservative government for 14 years, yet the Labour, basically councils and authorities do better for the financial packages than the Conservatives in North Yorkshire. What's going wrong? They aren't negotiating hard.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move on to now Felicity, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that question. I think it's a combination of things. In order to get better return on investment, we do need to wean ourselves off these consultants in a more focused way. We need to look first before we instruct any consultants. We need to look around at best practice. We need to look at places where everyone is on a bike all the time and just share information there with what's best and what can work best. I would appoint a commissioner for active travel because I think if you're going to appoint a consultant, you need someone with the real expertise to be able to drive the focus for what that consultation needs to cover. You need to make quick decisions and reduce costs, particularly at the moment. And I think in Harrogate, that's a really good example of how a very, very slow drawn out process has really, really cost us all dearly. And then in terms of return on investment, we need to be braver and look at the big schemes where we're going to get immediate returns on investment and a lot more in the way of active travel engagement.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much. Okay, next, Paul, please.
I think the critical issue, particularly lessons learned, would be this is about consulting with the public, making sure that there is an agreement and not, and that's the piece that has to happen. It's that early stage. What are we trying to achieve? How are we trying to achieve it? And make sure that the people come with us. So then we have an agreed plan, and then project management isn't the issue that it's proving to be. And I think good project management is essential here. In terms of a couple of the other side things, I think it's very important that we pick schemes that deliver quick wins, or they add to the schemes that we already have there, so that we're perhaps getting a double whammy from it. So my view on this is it's all about monitoring and measuring at all stages of the game, whether it's the consultation piece, whether it's the project management, or whether it's the schemes that you want to do.
Thank you very much. Okay, David, please.
I think one of the key elements, and it's the great part of why this law is so important, is the fact it is for a 30-year devolution deal. We actually have an opportunity to create a long-term vision and plan. The problem is when a lot of funding recently and over time has been 6, 12-month short-term, there's a lot of sticking plasters. Yes, we need short-term goals as well, but the fact we have the ability to invest long-term and actually set a vision for our long-term goal of what we want to achieve, I will make it a promise of mine that to really increase public travel usage and active travel numbers, that has to be a priority. And the fact we have a long-term vision and funding and support to be able to build to that means we can set a long-term plan to really develop that strategy over a long period of time, rather than lots of funding or policies being sort of short-term, 6, 12 months, where we can't get that investment, we can't really bring people along. And we also really have to bring, as everyone said so far, really bring communities and other organisations on board with us to make these plans happen.
Thank you very much. Keith, please.
I've already spoken.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's Kevin you're after.
Kevin, sorry. Kevin, it's 2K, sorry. Kevin,
Close.
please, thank you.
So I'm not sure of the words quick win, and I'm more of angels treads where fools need to rush, where fools rush in, because this has got to be sustainable and it's got to be long term. There's no point in rushing with these things. You've got to go to the right people for the right advice. And I'm really not into these quangos, what I call them, or these things that cost a fortune to tell us things really we already know. But I think the places to go with this are the town and parish councils. That's the hubs of the communities where they know what's going on. We need to embrace them into this policy. And why don't we start with the one good idea and try it in a place, and if it works there and there's a similar sort of place, go there and spread it that way, than go, oh, we're going to do this all over the county in North Yorkshire. Well, the county's so different. You've got rural demands, you've got urban demands. So this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. So that's where I'm at with this, is let's get it right. Let's get the funding from government. And I've been stopped. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you. Right. Okay, so we've got our next question. Sorry, just a slight technical issue. Can't. Right. Okay, just pulling. I'd lost my screen. Okay, question 4. Do you back 20 miles per hour limits in the station gateway scheme outside York train station on all roads within and including the York Inner Ring Road and outside the Inner Ring Road on York arterial roads where people are motor mix? I'm going to combine that. We've got another one as well that's come in saying, do you well, the question actually says, do you favour blanket 20, but that's not what we campaign for. I don't believe anybody's actually asking for what has been termed blanket 20. I think would you, Adrian, are you there? Could you just explain the difference between blanket and default, which is the preferred expression of road safety campaigners? Are you there, Adrian?
So what 2020 suggesting is that it should be 20 miles an hour where people are, basically. So where motor vehicles and people mix, that's where you need 20 miles an hour. There's nobody anywhere doing blanket 20 miles an hour, although you might argue that the City of Westminster is doing it, but by and large nobody is doing blanket. And what we suggest is that local authorities should be putting 20 miles an hour in where people are.
Okay, so there's a specific question about the gateway and certain roads in York, but there's also the general question about support for default 20. So I'm going to start with Felicity, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I support the position that there should be a default 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. So I can't support the application of the speed limit in all the areas in York within that first question, because I do think there will be valid exceptions in those areas. I would need to, I think each area needs to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on to Paul, please.
Taking the station gateway, it needs to be a safe shared space, and it's a transport hub, which I think we need more and more. We need to focus on having transport hubs. In terms of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit within that area, I do think that it depends on the particular road, and I think I would agree with Felicity that it's a case-by-case item that you need to do, and I'm not close enough to the plan or the data on the roads to be able to give you a definitive decision here. So I can't. All I can say is that would be reviewed, and it would be evidence-led. In terms of a default 20 mile an hour, and I thank was it Adrian for the clarification between a blanket 20 and a default 20, which I presume means we think 20 before we think 30, then I have no problem with that. I think that's a very sound idea. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to David, please.
Yeah, I support 20 mile an hour in the communities where they have wanted them and campaigned for them, and particularly emphasis around schools, obviously in particular. We've already seen some wards in York that have developed a 20 mile an hour zone, and by all and large it has gone well, but it's very much working with the communities that want them and working with people that want to see them. I think it's very important that we're not seen to be imposing onto people, but very much working with the communities that want to see it happen and provide a safer community for them. And I think it's in all of our interests, and with the group here, 2020, to really engage with communities more, show the positives around them and how we can work with them collectively. But I think, obviously no one's talked about blanket, and I'm glad that has been sorted. It's very much about working in the communities that want them, engaging with those communities more, showing the benefits of having 20 mile an hour zone, but particularly emphasis on around our school areas.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, please.
Thank you. I'm on the opinion of we need to listen to the residents to make these places work and to get people to agree with them. They've got to push them forward from the local towns and parish councils as well, because if you don't get buy-in from residents, you're just going to get the people are not going to abide by speeds. I don't think signs actually make people stick to the limits. I think either it's enforcement to make them happen, or people buy into it and say this is the right thing to do, and they reduce their speed because they want to, not because they have to. And I think that's what I'd like to propose if I was mayor, and really promote that. That's what we need to do. I'd have to the gateway question. I will say I've got consultate with the City of York. They're the people that are driving this, and they're the people doing it. So I need to understand from them and the data they have before you can make the decision if that road's suitable, this road and the other road. So it's all about talking to people and bringing them along with you to get that agreement. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Keith, please.
Yeah, by the sound of it, I think most of the candidates are broadly in agreement. And what I'll say, you need to be elected first. You need to then be speaking to the communities, to the people, finding out what they want, taking them with you. It's very important, is that, which is what the other candidates really said. And 20 miles an hour, the problem is it comes down to enforcement. On our high street in Pateley Bridge, it's 20 miles an hour. The majority of people on an evening are doing 50 and 60 miles an hour, and nobody's enforcing it. So it needs, unfortunately, the mayor becomes police fire crime commissioner, who normally appoints a deputy to carry that role, and with the right person in place to obviously hold the chief constable account, I'm sure that certainly if I'm mayor, that we will start to see effective enforcement of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. And clearly outside hospitals, stations, schools, it makes total sense that it should be 20 mile an hour, but there must be systems put in place to make sure it can be enforced.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Thank you for keeping your replies brief. It means we can get through more questions. So we've got, right, got my alarm going off again. Right. So that was the station. So the fifth question, how will the new mayor ensure their transport policies and spending comply with the Equalities Act 2010 around 20 miles an hour limit setting and other road safety measures? So this is my question. The context is that the elderly, young disabled and other protected groups are especially vulnerable to unsafe speeds and dangerous roads without better safety measures in place, such as 20 miles an hour limits, where people are motor mix, safer crossing, speed enforcement, cameras. So a question about equalities. So we're going to start with Paul on this one this time. Thank you.
Well, I think the important thing is that we do abide by that act, but I think it's slightly broader than just on the roads. I think that if we have, the mayor's responsible for bringing in a public transport system, a bus system, and it's important that it's completely inclusive. So I think you need to be looking at every single area. And I chair scrutiny of transport for the North, and last year they created a very good inclusivity policy that is free and available to every council across the north of England. And that would be one of my starting points, is I would be using what is effectively free consultancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, David, please, on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there with Paul on a lot of that as well, actually. Like all policies, it's not just about transport. They'll all be held to the highest standards of scrutiny and fairness. The combined authority has shown its openness and transparency and fairness by producing a 220-page constitution plus the assurance framework piece. There's also a scrutiny committee made up to be able to hold the mayor to account that makes all plans and policies carried out fairly, legally, and without discrimination. I'd also hope by working with groups such as 20s Plenty and resident communities and so on and so forth, that when we come up with these plans of how to improve transport, and particularly active transport, public transport, that we can bring organisations like yourself on board with that to be able to advise in greater depth on those issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Keith, Kevin, please. Sorry, Kevin. Next.
We'll get there. I already mentioned that some of the challenges we have with cars blocking the way for our disabled people, and they're the things I'll be talking to the police commissioner about about addressing these issues and having a bit more support for them sort of people that are the most vulnerable in our society. I mean, it's a massive document. I had a look at it the other day, and obviously we would have to have that ingrained in our policies in the combined authority as mayor. So it's nobody in the right mind would go against that, and it actually has to be ingrained as a golden thread all the way through everything the mayor will do. Thank you.
Okay. Do we still have Keith, or has Keith gone now?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, still here. So you're probably so Keith, would you like to go on this one?
You sounded disappointed then that I am gone.
Well, no, I thought you had to go at 8. That was all. Okay.
Yeah, I did. I've just asked the meeting if they can hang on for another 10 minutes for me.
Well, that's
so
very
yeah, it's like the mayor clearly will be putting together a transport plan, which should be an integrated transport plan, which should involve the enforcement as well with police, because we all see people's driveways getting blocked, blind people having to negotiate pavements with cars parked on them, etc. Somehow that has gone. However effective North Yorkshire police in these reports have been shown in relation to certain motoring offences, they certainly aren't effective in relation to vehicles parking on curbs and blocking entrances, etc. So I would say it's a combination of getting it right, but we also should have a bit of vision and be looking where successful models work in other countries for more use of walking, cycling, public transport, and that can be achieved. And personally, I have the vision that I see it as a model to start. York is ideal to get this going, to show that it can work elsewhere, because clearly the traffic virtually is at a standstill a lot of the time. So we need to do something very, very fast.
Thanks very much. Felicity, please.
Thank you. Yes, so to comply with the Equality Act, first thing to do really is assess what the vulnerable groups' needs are as road users. So establish where the locations are, what times of day, what the needs are of the users, what days of the week. And from that, you can then establish what sort of package of need might be and what assistance might be available. So I'm thinking about things like VAS lines, slower traffic lights, better lighting, zigzag lines to improve line of sight. But another question to ask is whether or not they are using the road willingly, or if they actually are in need of appropriate transport. And if that's a gap in the integrated transport plan, that's something I would need to fill with the provision of community buses or better other transport. And then the final thing you come down to is then the enforcement issue. If road users are still, those vulnerable groups are still finding it difficult or too challenging to use the road, we do need to look at the enforcement issue as to whether or not that needs to be resolved.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so next question. I think we've all been on that. So how do you so a slight sideways move, but I'll leave it to the candidates to see how they can connect this to road safety. How do you envisage marrying your role of mayor to the reduction of greenhouse gases? Okay, start with David, please.
Hi, so as the combined authority, we do have the economic framework, and pretty much everything cuts through that is how can we be much more how we can hit our target of being carbon neutral and reducing our greenhouse gases. Obviously transport is going to play a huge part of that. I'm really passionate about reducing the car journeys and really encouraging public transport and active travel. This is also going to be developed through reducing greenhouse gases and helping to meet net zero by the houses we build, the jobs that we create. But obviously the big one, obviously we're talking about here, is how we develop our transport, particularly our active travel, our bus network, our park and ride systems, so we can give people viable options instead of always having to use the car. We give them viable options to use bus, car, bus, bike, and walking, and all of the variables that can be used instead of just always having to use the car all the time. I think that's the great part of this whole role, is we can target our net zero ambition through the whole collective usage.
Okay, thank you very much. Kevin, please.
Quite a big question to answer in a minute, that's for sure. So it's really not enough time, but I'll try and do the best I can. So as mayor, one of my things is to create the circular economy that will invest in them really good businesses that have green backgrounds. Electric cars, we needed more points to charge them, and it all connects. Everything we'll do will connect in reducing the carbon footprints. Electric buses, electric cars, better bicycle routes, more active travel. They're the things we're going to do, and it's all part of my big plan, which will work to drive businesses, invest in educational skills that will from the schools to make sure the jobs are out there when we invest in these new green jobs that we can have, that are blue chip jobs, good paid, and that's how we'll drive it. If we're success in the business and people are earning money and they're making their lives better, reducing their costs, that will definitely be encompassed and people will support that. And that's what I'm going to drive to get that carbon footprint down. Thank you, Ian.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Keith, please.
Yeah, Ian, it will be the last question to answer because I've got a room full of 50 people now saying that
Yes,
5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we'll leave after this question. Really, again, a little bit of vision, a little bit of planning on the traffic planning, things like park and ride schemes, make them like motorway service stations where you've got all the facilities for people to use, where we get some kind of transport system so people who've used park and ride can actually have the shopping taken back to where they parked the vehicles. And that is a kind of initiative is going to reduce a lot of the emissions, cut down all the traffic and transport that's going into certainly the centres. And we're talking about, you know, from Selby to Skipton to York, so a massive area, but we can start by implementing things which people see appeal to them, make them so they want to actually go there. It's not uncomfortable to go and wait for a park and ride. Regular services, obviously the rollout of the electric buses, which such as York First buses are doing a fantastic job. And on that note, I shall say good night to everybody. I'm going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Keith. We will continue. We've got a couple more questions, but we'll finish this question first. So we've got Felicity next, please.
Thank you. Right, 4 ways to reduce greenhouse gases. Firstly, a good integrated transport system that really works will reduce the number of cars on the road because more people use public transport and that will reduce emissions. I'd also use the funding available to have more electric buses in the system as well. I would put funds in place in order to enable there to be more EV chargers, in it to enable people to have more solar panels on their roofs so they can charge their own cars that way. And I would lobby National Grid very, very hard to make sure that those EV chargers are given the priority that they need. 2 more points: more hydrogen production and more use of hydrogen by HGVs and tractors. That's something we can do ourselves. And also 20 is plenty, of course, reduces emissions as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Then we're going on to Paul next. Thank you.
Thank you. I think transport hubs are a critical part where you can change from one transport method to another, whether it's train or bus to car to your bike, etc., or you can just start to walk from there. So I think that's a critical part, because what we've really got to do is we've got to create a situation where people want to do modal shift. In other words, they want to move to a greener way of getting round, whether it's from car to bus or car to even cycling or walking. So for example, one of the schemes that I've got in mind is, and I know this sounds a bit parochial, but on Cllr Road in Harrogate, we could put a train station and it would take thousands of car journeys off the road. It would be about the same size. It would be about the same size in terms of turnover as, say, Hornbeam Park. I think it's important that we look at the quality of the roads and what's got to go down them. So, for example, we want a public transport system. We're going to have buses. That's the main thing. Only 3% of the population of North Yorkshire have access to the train. So it's going to be buses. So how do we do that? And how do we design the roads? 97% of our freight goes by road, and again, so that's important too. Thank you.
Okay, if you could stop there, thank you very much. Next question, I'm going to start with Kevin. I'm just going to bring up, I'm going to combine it with one of the ones that's just come in as well. So the one we already had is here. The mayor will have extensive powers. Oh, sorry, I've missed number 7. All right, okay. So we'll do this one first. How will you approach the issue of 20 miles per hour enforcement, including transparency about where speed limits are being enforced? So that's an enforcement question.
Thank you. And I think we've covered this already, but we'll go again. And this is about having vast signs and making people aware that, and the actually promoting the issue from within the communities of letting them know this is happening. What you want to do is communities and the places that it's going to be, these 20 miles, you want them to actually accept them and do them. It's a lot easier to when you explain to people they want to do it for the right reasons. And obviously, when it fails, you're going to start talking about vulnerable places where there's been incidents and data. Then you're going to have to start saying, right, we need speed limits and speed cameras are there. And so I would say that's the last place you want to be doing, because you start hitting people in the pockets. I think they just get annoyed and angry. And the best way to do is get them to come along because they want to, not because they have to. But there is a lot of speed signs that are speed blindness signs. People don't see them or don't acknowledge them. And that's where we're at. So it's an educational thing that we have to get through to people, how they get them to accept them. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Cheers. Felicity?
Thank you. Yeah, so we need to start with engagement before enforcement on this point. There needs to be a positive public message. We need to get as much buy-in as we can. And we need to be really, really consistent with this. And with 20 is plenty, it will soon become the default. We've used that word. But we all understand what 30 means. We all expect 30. We know what 30 areas look like. And it wouldn't take long, if we're consistent about this, for 20 to become that replacement limit. We also then at the same time will need enforcement. I know there's been speed camera reviews. I've seen that proposed in 21 and in 23 without it coming to anything. And I would drive that forward to complete that review and establish what is feasible and what's not. I think transparency is important. We're not here to entrap people, but it needs to be there. Enforcement needs to be there as a last resort. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
This is very much, I think, in the Vision Zero area. I think there's a lot about design, but the first thing is, if the parishes or the villages or the areas that want the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, in particular, then that it's about the desire. And if they want that, then one of the things that I was talking about earlier was that I was prepared to create a fund whereby the 20-mile-an-hour is part of the in particular council's remit, but that fund could be bid against to get what I'd call design changes. So, for example, chicanes in local parishes and villages, so that the 20-mile-an-hour almost becomes self-enforcing. But it's about what the people want, and at the last resort is enforcement, which is done in London, and it's very successful.
Brilliant, thank you. David, please.
I think pretty much as everyone said as well, it's about collaborative work. It's about engaging with the communities and working with the communities that want to see these big 20-mile-an-hour zones, and really working with them and engaging with them and bringing people along and showing other regions and areas of York and North Yorkshire of how important, how vital this could be. What I would also do is slightly turn the question around and ask people at places like 20's Plenty to see what approaches that other regions have already taken that have implemented 20-mile-an-hour zone, places where it's been successful, where other communities have brought this in and how it's worked, and what's been the feedback and how they've enforced it. Because we need to work from areas and regions that have developed ideas that have worked that we can roll out into York and North Yorkshire. So if we have other communities in and around Yorkshire and further afield that have implemented these plans and engaged with communities, how they've engaged with communities, how they've brought people on, how they've implemented it, how they have then enforced it. So we can work off that and roll those ideas across York and North Yorkshire.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we'll probably just have time for one more, I think, and then I think we're going to wrap up. So the last question, and I'll combine this with another one. So it's the last big question. So the mayor will have extensive powers in transport planning and potentially a handsome budget. Public transport in York and North Yorkshire is not in a good state, and yet is vital to reducing excessive use of private cars. Network York and North Yorkshire, connecting people and places, is a strategic plan for enhancing and integrated services across the area. Will you endorse it? And will you consider starting a demonstration trial of a new service as soon as you take office? And the related question that's come in today is, how would you improve connectivity to and from the Yorkshire coast? So, Felicity, would you like to start first, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Felicity?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I did want to just start with a question for Jonathan about his question, actually, because I got to be honest, what I'm familiar with is his manifesto for transforming travel in North and North Yorkshire and his strategic timetable. And I'm just conscious that he might be asking me about something else when he's referring to the network York and North Yorkshire connecting people and places. Is that the same document, Jonathan?
Yes, it is. The
Brilliant.
group has produced a new name for it.
Oh, that confused me. Thank you. I'm familiar with it then, and I have read it through. And yes, Jonathan, I think it's amazing the amount of work you've put into that. I think it's really fantastic. It's very inspiring to believe that even for a minute we could ever be like Switzerland. And if you can get us one step closer, that would be brilliant. I do support what you're suggesting. I have some reservations about franchising just initially, just because I am not comfortable taking levels of risk without knowing first what the level of risk is, if you understand what I mean. The enhanced partnership plus that's been proposed by some of the bus companies, I think might be a useful way of having an open book, one brand, one ticket system for some time, whilst we can then establish really where franchising would and wouldn't work and where the risk is most. But thank you. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. That's very good. I'll give you all a little more than a minute because there's quite a lot to get in a minute. But Paul, please. Thank you.
I'm afraid I don't recognise, or I never had a copy of this document, so I'm not sure what I'm commenting on. So I can't comment on the document. What I can.
Can I apologise? I wasn't aware of your candidacy, and I will make sure that you're sent it immediately.
So thank you very much. That would be very helpful, because I think I've looked at the public transport issue quite hard and how we do it, and it's quite clear that one solution will not fit all, because we've got York, we've got Harrogate, we've got other urban centres, and then we've got a lot of rural centres. I'm sort of starting to think that we probably need to be looking at some sort of spoke and hub system for the rural communities. I also have been investigating some ideas that, we would use, perhaps we would subsidise the bus system with it taking small freight, and therefore it will be a regular journey for small freight to go between the rural communities. So there's got to be a solution to this. I don't think anybody's found it yet, otherwise they'd have done it. But certainly we need to make we've got 10 years to get a bus service that's comparable to London. So we will have to hit the ground running, and we will have to look at all the different options. And certainly one of the things that Felicity mentions is we've got to make it frictionless as possible. In other words, one ticket sees you right the way through from one end to the other. And in fact, almost one end, so maybe through to West Yorkshire and dare I say Lancashire.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, David, please.
Yeah, I think what everyone's said so far is pretty much on the nose. And what I would also just to add into this is how it's really important that we develop from York and North Yorkshire, we develop into the other parts of Yorkshire and into the other parts of the country. So obviously linking up a really important and strong link will be into South Yorkshire and into West Yorkshire. So having dealings with the two mayors there, and obviously places over in a place like Manchester with Andy Burnham, and how we link up our bus network and our transport networks between those regions. Obviously a vital runs of a place like Leeds to York is obviously going to be a really important commuter route over from Manchester. So making sure we can have a collective cohesion working together, really bringing those mayors, which is going to be the real strength of any mayor that comes in, is having those real spokespeople to be able to stand up for a region, collectively working with the other mayors to really develop this. Because as we say, people are allowed to leave York and North Yorkshire and go into other areas, and it's making that seamlessly travel as well, and making the whole system work collectively. So it's not complicated. It's not when you cross into another area, it becomes a whole different system. Really working on that strong collective approach and really joining up not just Yorkshire but the whole of the northern region to make transport for work, for education, for leisure, everything work much better, which we don't really have now. I think if we can really improve on that in particular, that's going to be a great strength for York and North Yorkshire and the whole greater of the entire county of Yorkshire.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Kevin, please.
First of all, I'd like to thank Jonathan for giving me all the information. It was a really good learning curve for me a couple of weeks ago, and I've had a look at it. And I think this is the thing I'll take into the room if I was lucky enough to be elected mayor. And this will be my first point and how we can go forward. So I would use it as my first place, but actually we need to speak to the other parties involved to drive this forward. We need everybody to be together on this other strategy. I like the bus routes that you did. I think they're fantastic. I think we could possibly improve on some of them. They are a little bit different as you get to some of the rural areas. But I would certainly be having that in that folder in my hand when I walk in, when we start talking about transportation and how we're going to improve it and have the strategy right the way course. It's a massive undertaking because you've got so many different diversities through rural, through cities, through urban. So I would make my own strategy. You have to lead it. You've got to believe it, and you've got to sit down that table. And I can't say enough times, there needs to be agreed priorities in the combined authority, how we're going forward. Because if you take some stuff and it's scrutinised, and then one size you go through, and it's a voting system where the mayor can be outvoted, and it gets taken away, and it got to go back and forwards, that's the last thing you want to be doing. So you need to be clear as you push this forward and make sure you have agreement with all parties. At the end of the day, it could be a 3 versus 2 of one of the big parties. And if that happens, it's just going to be like that all the time. You need to avoid this. We need to be together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just check, Andy? I have gone through everybody, haven't I, with that round? Yes, excellent. So I think with that, I think we're going to wrap it up now. So firstly, I would just like to say it's been, it's surpassed my expectations. I think it's been thoroughly stimulating for us all to hear 5 people who've really thought very carefully. I just want to hand over to Adrian, who's part of the 20s Plenty national team. Have you got any comments on what you've heard today, or any sort of facts that you want to just clarify?
I think it's been fantastic. I said thank you so much to all the speakers and to everybody who's attended. It's been really, really interesting. I mean, just for this, two things to bear in mind. The first is on 20 miles an hour compliance. Even without enforcement, you do get a very significant reduction in speeds. And if you look at the evidence from Scottish borders and from Wales and all sorts of places, it's sort of 3 or 4 miles an hour without enforcement. And you'll also be aware that there's, and as I said earlier, you'll be aware that there's been some new guidance out. That really hasn't changed the picture at all. You can still, if you want to implement 20 miles an hour, you can do. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Andy, my co-host, have you got anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I've got nothing to add. Thank you.
Yes, except perhaps to say that I think all the candidates have been invited to an actual physical hustings in Whitby.
Yes, we hope to see them on the 15th of April in Whitby.
That's brilliant, and I imagine you will all have some very good. So we will be posting. We're going to Andy's going to parcel up that recording and send it to me to get onto our YouTube channel. So we'll let you know as soon as that in, and we can share that. So the other I don't know, 600,000 people that didn't turn up tonight for Hustings can look at it at their leisure, and I think there's some real gems there. So thank you very much, and good luck, all of you. I hope you all well, obviously not all win, but I hope you do yourself proud on the doorstep. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much. If you'd like to leave, and I might just have a quick word with Adrian once you've left.